This is a video review of the Asus VivoBook Q200e. If you've been doing any research online about the Asus VivoBook, the 11.6-inch touchscreen laptop, is that there are different models, and if you're going through a store, it's pretty simple to see, but if you're like looking on Amazon or searching other websites, it's a little bit confusing. But like for example, the x202e version is the one that has Bluetooth, and then the Q200e is the one that doesn't have Bluetooth. As far as I've been able to tell, that's the only difference. And then when you look at other, as far as the extension, because it has a long model number sometimes, that's really referring to whether or not it has a second or third generation i3 core processor. So just something to take in consideration when you're purchasing and you're doing your research and you're doing your price matching, because it seems like as though Asus is making some incremental changes as they ship each batch out. Because when I first went to Best Buy to make a purchase, it looked as though that they had this kind of previous model, which was a 1.4 gigahertz second gen, and it was at a discount of about $420, but they didn't have that in stock. But they had the newer version, which is basically all the same things, except that instead of having a 1.4 gigahertz processor, it had a 1.8. Now, in this review, I wanted to talk about just my first impressions, because I've only had the laptop for about 3 days, and I just wanted to give you an idea of kind of what it feels like if you haven't been able to go to a store and take a look at it. Now, the one thing that I don't really like, or it takes some getting used to, is Windows 8. It's a little bit underwhelming. I really like Windows 7, and I guess the idea of Windows 8 is to integrate touchscreen, so I'm stuck with it. If it wasn't for the touchscreen, I would downgrade to 7. As far as my first impressions are concerned about the build quality, the quality is pretty good in my opinion. It has a nice brushed metal right by the keyboard. It has mostly aluminum body with some plastic sections. It just feels really nice. It feels like a pretty expensive laptop, but it isn't expensive. It stops about when you start to actually look at the screen, because the screen is what you would expect from a budget laptop. It doesn't have the sharpness that you like to see, and it has this glare that's really annoying. If you noticed it at all in the video, it's a little bit annoying, but it takes some getting used to. I'm probably going to end up buying an anti-glare screen. The keys are pretty easy to type on, and they feel pretty good. I really like how comfortable it feels. My fingers don't feel that cramped at all. The screen isn't as bright as I'd like it to be. And as far as I can tell, I've only used it for 3 or 4 days, and the battery life is not what I would like it to be either. I was hoping to squeeze 4 hours out of it, and I get about 3, but that's only because of heavy use and turning up the brightness a lot. So take in consideration that if you optimize your settings and you keep brightness low, you'll probably be able to eke out a lot more minutes out of it. One comparison I'm making is that I'm comparing it to the Chromebook. I know it's kind of a apples to oranges, but the reason why I'm comparing it to the Chromebook is I initially bought a Chromebook, if you watched any of my previous videos, and I did somewhat of a similar review, is that I had the Chromebook for about 24 days before I decided to just ditch it, return it to Best Buy, and get this laptop instead. And the one thing that's for sure is that half a pound difference, or about 0.6 pounds difference, definitely you can feel. Because the Chromebook felt very light, it was very thin, and it was very agile. It didn't feel much heavier than the iPad. Whereas that extra half a pound really does make a difference when you're holding the Asus VivoBook. I mean, I have no complaints. I really do like the touchscreen. It really does come in handy. I will say though, it's like if you don't have really good vision or your eyes aren't the best, I really think that the screen might be a little hard for some people, but that's just my opinion. It just takes some getting used to. If you're used to a really big screen, it will definitely strain your eyes, but I think most people will get adjusted to it. Again, this is really designed. I bought this laptop primarily for a lot of heavy mobile use, so that I can have something small and something light, and something that was a lot more than basically a tablet. Because previously I had an iPad, which I sold. I had an iPad 2, which I sold to get a Chromebook. Then I sold the Chromebook. And sold some other things so I can purchase this Asus. The sound quality of the speakers isn't that great. It's actually not quite as good as the Chromebook. Not that it really matters, but it's just definitely something to to make note of. And talking about performance, the performance of the machine is pretty decent. It's not as fast as I would expect it to be or that I want it to be, but a big part of the reason why it's not as fast as I want it to be is because it's running a regular hard drive. I'm used to functioning on an SSD drive. The Chromebook had a SSD drive, a 16 gigabyte SSD drive. The iPad obviously runs on flash memory. And then my desktop computer, which is an i5 custom desktop, runs a Intel SSD hard drive as well. So the milliseconds and very, very fast load times when opening applications, because this is a laptop that doesn't run an SSD, runs just a regular 500 gigabyte hard drive that spins at 5400 RPMs, there's going to be a bit of a lag time. I was always wondering if it was because the processor was slow, and then as I was using it for this past 2 or 3 days, I began to realize that it's because it doesn't have an SSD. Which brings us on to the next subject, which is talking about upgradability. Now, I've provided some links in the notes and in the description to some articles that I've read online about this particular product, about the VivoBook. And it's not that easy to upgrade because everything's so tight and compact. Basically, sort of like a mobile phone. You don't really upgrade a mobile phone. This is the same idea. That's how they compact everything in here. So in order to upgrade it, you have to either be very skilled at doing soldering and pulling stuff out, or you have to send it in, or it's just not going to be upgradable. Because I read that the RAM is actually soldered in there and you can't upgrade it past 4 gigabytes. The other thing too is that the battery is not removable. It's in there, so you might have to send it in to get it replaced in the future, assuming you keep this thing alive enough. Not to say that this is poor quality, but I mean, technology changes fast, and if you want to keep this thing for a really long period of time, you're going to probably have to send it in to a professional to change the battery out. Unless, again, you have the skills to do this. Now, the performance, again, like I said, it's good enough. I think it's a great value. I mean, for under $500, I get a touchscreen laptop that's compact, small, and overall, I like it. Again, that's just my first impression. I'm a bit critical, but I mean, hey, I figure you're thinking about buying this laptop. That's the reason why you're buying it. So you want to make sure that you're getting the best value for your money. My opinion, at first glance, exceeds my expectations as far as how much I've paid. Getting an SSD or a bigger SSD drive would definitely cost an extra $100 or $200 easily. So just some things to consider. I hope you enjoyed my review, and if you could, please click like if you learned some stuff from this video. Please look forward to my kind of follow-up review of my experience with using the laptop. My opinion is that the follow-up review is much more important than the initial review. I mean, people do reviews online all the time, and they tell you it's good or it's bad or it's great or it's not. And the reality is they're not actually using the device full time, so they just give you their impression. Maybe they use it heavily, I don't know, but I'm going to actually use this thing pretty heavily because it's going to be my main laptop for at least a year. So my follow-up review will be, I'll probably do a 30-day review to give a more in-depth review of my experience with it and some of the quirks, because I'm sure I'll find a bunch of quirks. And if, depending on when you're watching this video, you'll see that the follow-up review will be a much better video to watch if you're deciding to buy this laptop, because it'll tell you, okay, after 30 days it dies, you know, or after 6 months it dies, or expect this to happen. And laptops have a pretty long lifespan, because sometimes lifespan in meaning that they have a tendency to, you know, they get used and then they get sold on eBay and they get bought, and maybe you're thinking about buying this laptop off eBay because it's come down in price a lot and new generations have come out. That's kind of the idea. I would just look at the follow-up review, because that will give you a better buying decision, in my opinion.